Destiny 2 Forsaken has completely overhauled the game as it stands, and it couldn't come at a better time, really. Bungie is getting back to the type of stuff hardcore gamers love to see, all the while improving on much more. With Gambit being a big part of this new experience, I wanted to make a quick beginner's guide for all those who are excited to make this new game mode part of their Forsaken experience. Gamers and Guardians, what is going on, y'all? Sly here, back at it once again with another D2 Forsaken guide, and this time, let's talk Gambit. At the time of this upload, we are mere hours away from the release of Forsaken, and I am absolutely freaking out about it, guys. I mean, T-minus like 12 hours, and I couldn't sleep because I just kept thinking about Forsaken over and over again, so I decided to get my ass up and finish this video. I think Forsaken will be the Destiny we have been looking for a very long time, but one thing I was kind of surprised to hear is how many players out there, they're excited for the new game mode, but few out there really don't know how it works or all the details. The September 1st preview helped kind of sort that out a lot for most people, but there are still those out there who want to know the basics. And if that's the case, then this guide is for you. In this video, we're going to talk about the basics, the NPC, invading, blockers, moats, maps, strategies, numbers, loadouts, and much more. So sit back, chillax, and let's do the damn thing. Now, Gambit is Destiny's newest game mode. It is a PvPvE experience, which simply stands for player versus enemy. However, there should be a more emphasis here on PvE, because while the multiplayer aspect is there, it's very short-lived. However, it does play a big part within the game as a whole. Now, as a side note, Gambit will also be an excellent way to use XP buffs for leveling up your Guardian's character level. Crucible Ghosts do not work in Gambit, or at least they did not work in the preview. However, I suspect there will be Gambit Ghosts where you earn extra XP. I'm sure they drop from like Eververse or the Drifter, someone like that. That, along with Fire Team Medallions or any other XP buff, that will be one of the best ways to keep getting your character at a higher level after the campaign is over. Alright, so Gambit is a 4-on-4 matchmaking enabled activity, which the end goal, super simple. You basically want to collect as many modes that the enemies drop as possible, stuff them into the bank, summon your boss, first team to kill their boss wins the round, best out of 3 wins. That's pretty much the gist. Kill as many things as possible, as fast as possible. However, there is much more than that. So starting off, let's talk about the basics, guys. Once you start killing enemies, they drop these triangles called moats. They look just like the triangles you get from chests out in the open world, except these are white, and actually they're called moats of darkness, something we'll get to a little later on. Each player runs around and tries to collect as many moats as possible as fast as possible. The end goal, like I said earlier, is to summon a boss called a Prime Evil. I simply just call it Prime. You put these moats into a device called a bank, which, no matter the map, is always going to be located in the center of the map. There will be 4 receptacles that you use to stuff the moats into, and just so you know, the invasion portal will always be located by the bank itself, no matter the map you play on. So when you start playing Gambit and you see a bunch of different maps and you're not really sure of their layout, the portal is always located right next to the bank, which is always in the center of the map. We'll talk more about invasion here in a few, but just know that it's always close to the bank itself, and of course the bank is always in the middle. So what you're trying to do, guys, is fill up your bank as fast as possible while trying to slow down your opponents, and this is kind of where the PvP aspect comes into play. Now, I think there's like 2 types of PvP here, direct and indirect, or at least that's how I break them up. Indirect PvP is used by sending over these things called blockers. Now, blockers are enemies that you send over to the opposing team. They shut down access to the enemy team's bank and blocks access for them to deposit their moats, hence the name blockers. There are 3 versions of these blockers that you can send over. There are small, medium, and large. However, these blockers cost moats to send over, and of course moats are those things you're collecting. Small blockers cost between 5 and 9 moats. Medium blockers cost between 10 and 14 moats, and large blockers cost 15, which, by the way, is also the max amount of moats you can carry at one time. Now, of course, common sense says the larger the blocker, the harder they are to take down, and the more of a nuisance they are for the opposing team. However, carrying around 15 moats is kind of a gamble here. If you die with moats in your possession, you will lose them all permanently. Losing 2 to 3 from dying, that's no big deal. It happens, whether from being invaded or just a mistake, whatever. However, losing 15, though, that can be the difference between winning and losing a match. Now, as for the direct PvP aspect, we come back to the portal I talked about earlier. Whenever a team hits certain moat thresholds, this portal will open up, allowing you or another teammate to jump into it and cross over to the other team's map, which you can go and then kill them, kind of like the Crucible. This is called Invasion, and the portal opens up every 25 moats, so 25, 50, and 75. Also note that 75 is when your primeval or your prime is summoned as well. Now we'll get to strategies and loadouts at the end, but during invading there are two things you need to be aware of. First, take a look at your opposing team's name tag. You will see X something. Whatever that number is, it shows you how many moats that person is carrying. So of course, you want to go for the highest number possible. The more moats you take out of their possession, the slower they are to recuperate. The second thing you want to be aware of is that once primevals are out for both teams, invasion becomes much more powerful. If you invade and you kill a guardian, it will in turn heal their prime. But beware, because the same could happen to your team. Now you only get 30 seconds per invasion. It's actually 29 seconds by the time you pop out of the portal, which is not a lot of time at all. Now invasion portals, they stay up until they are used, and depending on your tactics, you can use that to your advantage. Next, let's talk about Gambit maps. Now, the September 1st preview only showed off one map, and the map I saw at E3 was different, but there are two more in addition to those. So 4 maps in total, and they're all different. Like I said, the bank and the invasion portal will always be in the middle of the map, no matter which map it is. And, think of Gambit's maps kind of like small circles within a larger one. So imagine one large circle with a small circle right smack dab in the center. That's where the bank and the invasion portal are located. Then at 3 o'clock, 12 o'clock, and 9 o'clock, you will have these smaller circles. These areas are where enemies spawn. Just like in PvP maps, they have names like canal, docks, bridge, tunnel, etc. So callouts are pretty easy to know where they're coming from. Now you'll know enemies are spawning in these smaller areas from two ways. First, the drifter will announce it, and there will be a red square that looks just like the kill patrol with the dots on it, except it'll be blinking red. Also, there are 3 enemy spawn points, just like I said, 12, 3, and 9 o'clock, and there will be sort of like a flag post with a light on top. If the light is blinking red from this post, then that means enemies are invading from this area. The light will blink, but finding enemies, that should never be a problem. Now, if the enemy team is invading, everything will turn red for a couple of seconds. So if you're running around, collecting motes, doing your thing, and everything turns red, that means beware, because someone just used the portal and they are now on your turf. That pretty much signals their entrance, and they spawn in the same areas as the enemies. But you never know which zone they're going to come from. It could be the one at 3 o'clock, the one at 12, or the one at 9. It could be any one of those, so just make sure everyone kind of, picks a zone. It always looks when things turn red, so you can make a call out if you see them. They have an overshield, and they're glowing red, so they're kind of hard to miss. But in the heat of battle, they usually take you by surprise, so stay at the ready. Also know that heavy spawns by the bank every so often, so be aware of that, because heavy is a vital part of this game mode. Alright, so next up, let's talk about primevals, or primes as I like to call them. Like I mentioned, the first team to down their prime wins the match. You do that twice, you win the game. Also remember that if a guardian invades your map and they kill you while your prime is out, that will heal your prime, making all that damage you just dealt useless. So the idea is to burn your prime down as fast as possible. Now you do this in a few ways. First with the right loadout, of course, but secondly with a damage buff. Once you get to the primeval stage, you'll notice a buff at the bottom left hand side of your screen. It will say Primeval Slayer times something, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, whatever the case may be. Along with your prime, other enemies will spawn in. These are called Envoys of the Darkness, or simply Envoys. For every Envoy that you kill, you will get a damage buff, and this damage buff is team-wide. So if you kill one Envoy, then the whole team gets a ×1 bonus damage. These other enemies that spawn in quite frequently, so always keep an eye on them and make sure you burn them down, because they help you out a bunch. Alright, so those are the basics, but a quick recap. If you're killed, all your motes will disappear for good. It takes 75 motes to summon your prime. For blockers, it takes between 5 and 9 to send a small Taken Phalanx. Between 10 and 14 sends a Taken Knight, and 15 will send a Taken Ogre. Of course, 15 is the max you can carry at one time. Once your primeval is out, killing a guardian while invading will heal their prime, or the opposite, you dying from an invading guardian heals your prime. Also remember, kill Envoys of the Darkness, because the Envoys are what give you the damage buff to help you take down your prime more efficiently. Alright, so next up, let's talk about early strategies and weapon loadouts. Now, just so you know, this video was uploaded like 10 or so hours before Forsaken went live. So I do need more playtime and things to settle down before we know exactly what works and what doesn't. But this is what I've had success with at E3 and from the Gambit preview. So as this is a team event, a good team will assign roles. It's best to have one dedicated invaders and the rest DPS. Only the invader worries about invading while the others are strapped out, with DPS loadouts. There are many new loadouts thanks to the new system, but I still use my trusty Better Devils along with the Ikelos shotgun, and heavy, there are a couple of options depending on what you're doing. Sleeper Simulant, for some reason, absolutely destroys in Gambit. It is really, really good for primeval damage. However, Whisper, still completely valid, as is Acreus and Wardcliff Coil. Now, as for your invader, I would recommend using long-distance supers such as hammers, which are devastating when invading, or Golden Gun and Dawnblade. Dawnblade is actually especially effective due to how fast you can close gaps with your jumps. Stormcaller with Crown of Tempest and Ionic Blink also works well, but just be aware of an electric shotgun because they will take you down pretty quick. Long distance supers are the way to go. Now, you only get 30 seconds when invading, so being able to take things out at a distance saves you time from chasing the enemies down, which will more than likely eat up half of your invasion time. Also remember, once you get 4 kills, you are teleported back no matter how much time you have left. As for weapons, the usual PvP loadout, works pretty well. It's mostly just about heavy when it comes down to the primeval stage, but supers will do the most work. However, tracking rockets are amazing right now. The Scipio D, Morgan D, and a few others coming with Forsaken get the job done nicely. So as far as dedicated invaders, I would recommend just having one, that same person going back because they're already loaded out, but you can have, 2 if you want. If someone doesn't have their, super ready, you can have a backup go in to help, get more kills. That lets the others simply focus out on their DPS loadout and get, stuff motes in the bank. Again, Sleeper works wonders for everything in there at range, and shotguns, no matter the type, just let you blow through shields as well as small-time enemies to collect as many motes as possible. Now, once everyone gets their primes out, do not invade the other team until you see their prime at half health. Like I said earlier, the invasion portal doesn't go away until you use it, so going in when it's full health is pretty much a waste because, first of all, there are no more motes for you to stop them from inserting. It's now all about healing, so do not use the portal until you know that you can heal their prime. 90% of the time, they're all going to be huddled up in one spot doing damage together, taking advantage of a rift or something like that. This is a great time to go in there with a super and just mop up the whole team. Now, while you're not invading, you of course are going to be helping banking motes, but always save your super for invading if you are the dedicated invader. Always. Now, that's for the prime stage. As for the beginning of Gambit, I still really haven't nailed down whether sending back-to-back small ones are the better option or wait until you have 15 to summon a large. I'm going to need more playtime, but personally, it seems that sending over the medium ones are the best answer. They don't have as much health as the Ogre, but they are a bit more lethal, and if you can send over multiple ones at once, it is a headache for the other team. Also, if you guys all save up for medium blockers right off the get-go, you're going to have at minimum 40 motes in the bank, which means you can invade. So once you do invade, you're going to see the opposing team dealing with 4 big enemies and a pocket full of motes that they cannot safely store, which is perfect time for you to go and take them out. Now, if you try and go for the large blocker, it seems like those 5 extra motes take you like twice as long to get, and the medium blockers seem a bit more lethal than the Ogre, especially when you have 2 or more there. So mediums seem like the best bet for me. However, sometimes you just simply send over what you can. The only real strategy here is at the very first move, and then when the prime is summoned. Everything else in between there is just chaos at the best of times. Now, like I said, once the game starts getting all played out day after day, new things will emerge, and when they do, I'll be sure to let you guys know about it. Next, let's talk a little about the lore of Gambit. Now, there is a lot of lore coming with Forsaken. We're getting a new lore tab in-game that pretty much lets you collect all of the lore you find out in the game and read it in book format right there in your menu. And guys, we are getting some of the best lore Bungie has ever created. I read a, it was like an armor piece that pretty much spoiled the ending of the raid and part of the story for me. So I just went ahead and read most of it, and I can tell you it is phenomenal, but wait till you finish the story and you beat the raid. But with that, the Gambit and everything ties in to older characters from Destiny 1, things you've always wondered about. I mean, in these Motes of Darkness coming out, like the banks, everything you see and everything you do in Gambit has a purpose. So, while I'm not going to spoil it for you now, I definitely recommend that when the time comes, you sit down and read all of the Gambit lore, because it is definitely worth it. But that is about it, Guardians. That is just a quick overview of Gambit, the basics, loadouts, what to do in the beginning, what to do at the end, how everything works, and hopefully it helps you out for the better. But that is it for me, Guardians. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a freaking blast with Forsaken. We are mere hours away from launch, and I couldn't be more excited. Subscribe for more Destiny 2 and Anthem videos. Spank the thumbs up, but only if you enjoyed yourself. And comment down below if you have any questions, if you want to see other types of Destiny videos, or if you just want to say what's up. Take care, Guardians, and keep those eyes peeled for many, many more videos coming out here very soon. But until then, this is your dude Sly, and I'll catch you guys next time.